So I have to correct myself on something. Last night, I did a video which premiered this morning, where I talked about or asked the question of whether or not we would see She-Venom in Let There Be Carnage. And thanks to the spoilers that are out there, because there are a lot out there. Angry Joe's put a spoiler video out. 3C Films has put a spoiler video out. Comic Book Cast 2 has put a spoiler video out. Everybody, except for several others, have yet to put... what I'm trying to say is many people that have seen the movie through Wikipedia, through YouTube and all that, have pretty much done spoiler videos for Let There Be Carnage. Except for a few. One of them being John Campia, who probably knows that the spoilers are out there, but wants to wait till at least Monday because he's going to be out of town starting tomorrow to talk about it with the open spoiler discussion. But anyway, I asked the question of whether or not she would be in the film. And I asked this without knowing all the specific details because, there wasn't that many spoilers yet. But now that there is, we find out that yes, she was in the film. She was in the film. She-Venom and was back in the film. Venom and Anne, who comprise of She-Venom, bonded once more. But what's interesting is the takeaway from that is I think we get two She-Venoms. Miss Chin, who was in the first film, the store lady, allows Venom to bond with her when Venom and Eddie are separated because they had a fight, kind of like a disagreement in which they realize, hey, we may not totally like each other, but we do need each other, stuff like that. And they do end up bonding back together. But Miss Chin allows Venom to bond with her, and she temporarily becomes a She-Venom. I don't know if we see her in full She-Venom form or anything like that, but she basically becomes a temporary host. Then Anne shows up realizing something is wrong, realizing that Eddie's being framed, and she decides that she needs Venom's help to find him, and she allows herself to bond with Venom again. Basically, she has Venom follow her, lets him bond with her, but what it sounds like to me, just the way people were describing it, it sounds like she was more willing than she was in the first film. Like she did it out of necessity in the first film and really enjoyed it, really enjoyed that bondness between her and Venom after she kissed Brock as She-Venom to allow Venom to flow back onto Brock and bond with him. I think she did something with her finger on her lips or something like that to where she kind of she liked the taste. She liked the idea of, being that, that alter ego of herself. So, everybody was wondering after that, would we see her again? And here we did. And even though it was for just the same amount of time as what we got in the first film, maybe a little bit more, it sounded like she got to do a little bit more as well. Like she did get to attack some people to free Eddie, and she carries Eddie across rooftops. She does, jumping across rooftops, according to what people are saying, and from in the videos as well as on the internet. She's jumping across rooftops with Eddie, and basically she allows Venom to rebond with Eddie through another kiss, I think, or something like that. It looks like it's going to be a handshake, and then it's a slap, and then it's a kiss kind of deal, something like that. Anyway, she helps. She basically plays the same role she did in the last film with a little bit more extra momentum added to it. In other words, she gets to do a little bit more. So yeah, I have to correct myself and basically say that yeah, we did see She-Venom in the second film, but the question still remains, will we see her in other Venom-related films? And more specifically, and again, this came with the spoilers, will we see her in future Spider-Man films? Because the post-credits scene actually ties into what's going on or what will be happening in Far From Home or No Way Home and all that, as well as in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Because what happens at the end of the film in the post-credits scene is you have Venom and Eddie on the run. They're hiding out in what looks like an abandoned area, like they're out on vacation and all that, in a abandoned room and everything. And all of a sudden, as they're just waiting out there, thinking, man, what's next? What's going on? They're wondering what's next for them. And Venom, he's about to share some information that he has, because apparently Venom has, these memories and knowledge of all these different worlds and universes, apparently, or at least this interpretation of Venom. And what happens as they're thinking this, all of a sudden you see this bright orange light. And according to Angry Joe Vargas, who went to go see it with his friends and his girl last night, when you see this bright light, it's almost, while you're seeing it, it's almost like you could hear Doctor Strange's voice on the other end. So basically, that's the multiverse rearranging everything. And Venom's wondering what's going on. Eddie's like, I don't know. Everything's spinning around, the room's spinning around, and then it all comes to a stop. And they get up, and after it comes to a stop, Eddie looks up at the television screen, which is like a small, old school, I would say late 80s to early 2000s, or not early 2000s, but late 80s to mid 90s television screen. And he's looking up, and Venom's like, well, what are you looking at? Let me see what's going on. So Venom, takes over, looks at the television screen, and what shows up on the screen? Tom Holland as Spider-Man. And this obviously is after the revelation that, Peter Parker and Spider-Man are one and the same. So basically what happened is, because of what's going to occur in Far From Home and Multiverse of Madness, and maybe tying in a little bit with Loki and WandaVision, what happens is Venom, instead of Spider-Man, Tom Holland going into his universe, which still may happen in Far From Home, instead you have Venom being thrusted into the Tom Holland MCU verse, which is pretty cool. So now the question remains, will he show up in Far From Home? Will he show up in Multiverse of Madness? We don't know. It's totally up in the air. But obviously Venom seems to know who Spider-Man is, and it's going to be interesting to see how they work him into the system. So basically, the way this ties into my question from last night in my initial video, and the correction I have to make here in this video, is, will we see She-Venom in another Venom film, a Venom 3, or will we see her show up in future Spider-Man films where the Spider-Man is still part of the MCU, which it now looks like Venom is a part of as well, or will she show up in the Sony-verse version, or the Sony Spider-Verse, if you will, should Tom Holland and Spider-Man go back and become Sony's MCU property instead of Disney's, or at least a conjunction, if you will, between the two. It really makes you wonder. It really makes you think and speculate if how she'll show back up and everything. Because if Anne's character is similar to how her character is in the comics in some way, she's gonna want to bond again with Venom, because it's like there's a part of her that has to be, that has to, be part of that bondness. Like she has to be one with Venom, if you will, to be She-Venom. So we'll see what happens. Another thing that I think really got people wondering too, as to, why this movie, even though a lot of people are liking, critics anyway are liking it, and a lot of the audience is liking it, the one question everybody has is, why wasn't this movie given an R rating? Because according to a lot of the reviews, non-spoiler and spoiler reviews, there is a lot of violence in this. There's a lot of murder, bloodshed at times, not to an extent to where it's like, ooh, bleh, kind of deal. You got to barf and everything, or hold your stomach, go get queasy and all that. But it's to an extent that basically, it makes you wonder, well, if they're going to go that far, why didn't they just say this is an R-rated film? And that is a good question, especially if you're going to invoke a character like Carnage going up against a character like Venom. It makes you wonder, why didn't they, just go with an R rating, knowing how violent these characters are in the comics, and basically how much more looser you could be with, the action between the two, CGI or whatever, when the symbiotes are fighting, how much more looser you could be with it. And I think what some people have always said is, look, the reason they didn't do it, even though it would have made more sense, is because you got to get the kids in there. Like, even though the kids might be scared out of the wits, if you will, watching this film, you got to get them in there because Venom is a character that, is a cool character. He's an anti-hero. He's a cool character, and they like those kind of characters. So, yeah, it is a good question, especially with the way people describe some of the things that took place on film. And the fact that you have Woody Harrelson's character, Cassidy Cletus, Cletus, if you will, being a serial killer, with the reputation he has and everything, and then some of the things that took place, in the film that represent that, you have to wonder why it wasn't just an R-rated film. And, that's just marketing for you. They will. Here's what I think. I believe Sony and Andy Serkis and all of them realize that this is a movie, even though it's a sequel to the first movie, that it's a movie that does need an R rating, but because Sony wants to make sure they get in that same audience, that the MCU draws in, that Disney, I should say, draws in for the MCU films, they realize that if they're going to get that same audience drawn in with Venom, especially with the ending and the post-credit scenes that they're going to give, or they're giving out, they know, hey, the best way to do that is PG-13. And what's crazy is this kind of connects to something that Nostalgia Critic said not that long ago, well, a couple years ago in a video where he asked whether or not does PG mean anything anymore. He talked about one movie that got a PG-13 rating that should have gotten an R rating right off the bat, and that's Drag Me to Hell. And believe it or not, Lord forgive me for saying this, but when I was in my final days on vacation at Disneyland with my sister and her family, basically one of the movies we saw in the hotel, or they were watching to kind of get rested and go to bed, was Drag Me to Hell. Yeah, it was that film. And I could understand just by that ending and, by what Doug was saying in his video on it when he, as the Nostalgia Critic, I can understand. Because you look at a film like that, you look at the promotional artwork and poster work for it, and it's like, why wasn't this given an R-rated film? And again, it's all based on the studio wanting to bring in, more audience members. Like, they knew that movie would be a movie not just for horror fans, but it's a movie that teens could get into. And I think maybe the mindset was still, hey, these are the kind of movies that teens would get into. So, I don't know. But yeah, it's to me, relating and going back to this topic, I can understand where people are coming from. And, a movie like this does lend itself to a R rating. Now, my hope is when they release it onto digital as well as onto physical media like Blu-ray, DVD, and 4K, that we will get two versions. We will get the PG-13 version and we will get the R version. That's what I think. That's what I'm hoping what's gonna happen, because when you look at something like, let's say, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the ultimate cut came out and that was R-rated. Justice League came out, the initial version, that was PG-13. Zack Snyder came back, gave us his version, that was R. So there's always a chance that a movie that you believe and know just by its promotional trailers, TV spots, posters and everything, basically what I'm trying to say is, when you see a movie like Venom that Venom Let There Be Carnage, that based on everything I just mentioned, should have an R rating, but instead has a PG-13 rating, that there's a good chance, and that's what I was trying to think about what I was going to say there before I almost had a brain fart. But basically, you realize that this is the kind of movie that has a good chance that when it gets a later release, digitally and physically, that it will get the double treatment. It will get its release. The PG-13 version will be released. And to coincide with that, you'll get the R-rated version. Because honestly, and this is the truth, honestly, at 97 minutes, just 3 minutes under 100, an hour and 40 being 100, there was some things cut out. There was some things cut out that would have extended it a lot longer. And like I said in my initial video last night that premiered this morning, I think Anne and Venom being bonded together to become She-Venom again, I think honestly there was, I'll be honest with you, I think there was supposed to be more to that. I think maybe, Venom would, here's my thing, I think there was supposed to be more of an extended scene and bondness between those two, and maybe Venom probably was going to, again, not saying this happened, but my speculation is maybe Venom doing that possible extended scene of bondness between the two. He might wonder, why is Anne so fascinated with him now? Why is she more willing now to be with him? And maybe Anne, will try to give him an answer as best she could. Like, maybe, she doesn't know, or it's just maybe something that he woke up inside of her or something. I don't know. But anyway, long story short, though, I honestly believe that this is one of those cases to where you're going to get potentially 2 different digital and physical releases when it comes out in the next month and a half. Because if it's part of that 45-day window, then yeah, I got a feeling by the time we get to November, Christmas if you will, when the movie comes out digitally and physically, yeah, I think honestly we're going to probably get 2 different versions of the film. One that's going to be like I said, the regular PG-13 version, and one that's going to be an R-rated extended version. That's just me. It's just my opinion. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here. I know it sounded like I was all over the place, but again, one of the things about my videos here on my channel is I like to be unscripted and just let it come to me as I do them, as best I could. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. What did you think about She-Venom showing up in the film? If you've seen it, or you read or heard the spoilers, what did you think about her being in the film? Do you think we might see her in a future Venom film, or maybe a future Spider-Man film? What are your thoughts? Do you think maybe there was supposed to be more of a scene, more of a bondness, between her and Venom in this film that might, get included in an R-rated extended version when it comes out? What are your thoughts? Also, what are your thoughts on the fact that this should have gotten an R rating initially, but they went with PG-13? How do you feel about that? And what are your thoughts overall on now Venom being in the MCU verse with Spider-Man, and the possibility that to get Venom back into his universe, Spider-Man's got to go with him or something? What are your thoughts? Comment down below. Let me know how you feel about it. Live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Check me out at my Teespring store. Check me out on BW Rosas discussions on all your favorite podcast locations except for Pandora. Audio podcast, that is. Except for Pandora. As well as check me out at BW Rosas on Vimeo as well as on Patreon at Brian Walmer BW Rosas. So until next time, guys. God bless. Take care. I'm out.